Hey guys, Tom here from Metalloud, and today we're going to be doing a 1 year later review for the album from I Wrestled a Bear Once called Hail Mary. Now, this album came out last year around June, and so it hasn't been quite 1 year yet, but we're getting there, so figuring out this review and just to take a look at it and see how it's developed over time, what my thoughts are now versus what they were then. And when I started out that review, originally, one of the things I mentioned was that it's the heaviest album from them and it's the most serious album from them. And that is definitely still true. It still kind of catches me that it lacks a lot of the kind of off the wall antics and just randomness that their other albums had even after their frontwoman changed. They still kind of kept that style. It was definitely toned down a lot more on their album previous to this, called Late for Nothing, but it was still there. There was everything from surf rock to mathcore. It really kind of had everything in there. The random disco, just so many random elements that were thrown out there, and you never knew what to expect with their sound. And that's something that they've always kind of carried over. And at times, especially in their early years, it really kind of was juvenile in a sense. It felt like it was just random to be random, but as it started progressing on, they really were getting good at incorporating those elements into the songs in a way that was coherent and made it actually enhance the songs versus felt like they were just stuck in there just to say, look how quirky we are as a band. And Hail Mary doesn't really have any of that in there. There's a few times where things change up a little bit, but generally speaking, there's none of what we've expected from I Wrestled a Bear Once. Now, for a lot of people, because this is more of a straightforward grindcore album versus a mix of everything else, this is a mix of just deathcore, grindcore, mathcore, all that mixed in together, and for that, a lot of people are probably going to enjoy it a little bit more if you're coming from those genres, particularly grindcore and deathcore. If that's something that you're really into, you'll probably like them more than you did in the past if you were kind of turned off by those weird and just random quirky elements that they had going. For me personally, it's something that still kind of sticks out to me. And it's weird because it's still a fantastic album. I mean, it's honestly one of my favorite I Wrestle a Bear Once albums, but it's still at the same time different from what they've done. And in that sense, it's kind of weird to talk about. I still listen to this album regularly. There's not so many songs that I put on my car ride, just because they are kind of a little heavy. I mean, this is I hate this word, but brutal album to listen to. The nice thing about it is if you're listening to it as an album, the pacing is done very well, that it never tires itself out. You never feel like it's just overly oppressive, and just when you're kind of getting tired of the heaviness of it and the screaming and the breakdowns and all that, they hit you with some soft, clean vocals and some definitely a nicer track, and then it goes right back into the heaviness. The tracks that particularly still stand out to me today would be the Green Eyes, Gift of Death, Kill to Death Part 1, and a few other ones on there. And like I said, this is still one of my favorite I Wrestle a Bear Once albums. It's definitely the most serious album. It's definitely an album where they're really not going as crazy as they have in the past, and if that's something that you loved about them, you're not going to like this album so much. And like I said, you're definitely going to find the heaviness and the technical aspects of this album are fantastic. The guitar work on here, the drumming, every time there's songs that have multiple breakdowns, but they're all different breakdowns. They don't sound exactly the same. They're not generic chuggy chug riffs of at any time. So there's still a lot that stands out on here, but it's definitely a more toned down and more serious album than they've ever done in the past, and it's a little weird to get used to that. So over the year, I would say definitely this album has really kind of stood up. It really is a nice addition to their discography. I still think it's one of their best albums that they've released. The transition from the different front women's that was on the last album, thankfully there was no real shock to it. She kind of really transitioned well and smoothly into it, and I feel like her voice, in particular Courtney LaPlante's ability to switch between her cleans and her screams are just extraordinary, that you don't really see a lot in this genre. But as far as this album goes, it really does hold up pretty well. It's still fun to listen to. Especially if you're looking for something that's just completely just brutal at times, and just extremely heavy with a lot of technical breakdowns and things like that. So it keeps things interesting and never tires you out.